Hello, my fellow viewers and subscribers in this Superchocolatemilkshake, and before I begin with this video, I am going to say something. So, this video is going to be about Scarlet and Violet, and of course I know I'm going to get some people who are going to try and tear into me. Please listen to this message before you get deeper into this video, because I know if you're going to like the game and defend the game, fine. I'm not going to let this change your opinions, but I'm also going to let you know that really, you're not going to get anything better than this if you're going to spend your time shutting up your critics. So with that out of the way, please understand, I'm doing this out of a place of love. Alright, so with all that out of the way, I would like to start off saying that I am a bit of a Pokemon fan myself. I actually grew up on the original anime, and I also played Pokemon Omega Ruby and liked it. I played Sun and liked it. I've played Red and liked it, and I've also played Silver and liked it, okay? I've also played Legends Arceus and loved that game. Actually, I think it's probably the best Pokemon experience out there yet, and actually still is the best Pokemon experience, hands down. But for Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, it looks like they just dropped the ball here, man. I mean, there's a lot of things that they just kind of ripped out of it, and I'm not talking about the polish. I'm quite literally talking about some features that were in Arceus that didn't appear in Scarlet and Violet at all. So, let's get started on this. I'm going to be a bit critical here. First of all, I was thinking about spending $60 on a game, and I'm glad I spent it on Sonic Frontiers over Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. Because it feels like Sonic Frontiers looks to be more of a polished game, and is a polished game from what I've played. But I've never played Scarlet or Violet myself. Personally, I probably would play Scarlet more over Violet because, hey, I'm just a red type of guy. But I'm sorry, but this game is not worth $60, let alone $20. Heck, if I were to play this game actually, I would consider pirating it first. And yes, Nintendo may come in and shoot me in the head for that, but you know what? I don't care. This game is not worth a single cent of my money, and I'll give you some reasons why here soon too. First of all, if you're going to give the defense that Game Freak is an indie studio, I have to beg to differ, okay? Calling Game Freak an indie studio is an insult to indie game developers because, first of all, Pokemon is a multi-million-dollar franchise. No, multi-billion-dollar franchise. I mean, quite literally, the amount of money that they have is ludicrous. They could actually spend money on other game developers, and they could spend money on other anime studios just to make the anime and the cards and the products and all that other stuff and not lose a single cent of it. I mean, really, they have nothing much to lose, which is probably the reason why they took such a gamble on releasing such a buggy, broken, messy game. Probably the reason why it also went through QA testing, but never really had any of the notes resolved from it. So, with that out of the way, I really do not think Game Freak deserves much in the way of defense. Neither does the Pokemon Company either. Really, I think there needs to be a lot of reorganization done within Game Freak and Pokemon Company itself in order for these games to get better. And I do have some suggestions on that. Actually, Pokemon Legends Arceus is a much better game. Yeah, sure, the story may be far more tied to the progression of the game, and I do agree with that. And I do think that does hamper the gameplay in some ways, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. The story was written rather well, I was kind of invested in the world, invested with the characters, and personally, I kept going because I wanted to experience more, in a good way, and it gave me more, in a good way. I loved the game from start to finish, and honestly, I'm still playing it even to right now. It's a really fantastic game, and honestly, it was worth the $60 no matter what. But with Scarlet and Violet, I see all these glitches, the bugs, these frame rate drops, and then of course I hear people actually talking about the game and some of the critical points of the game design, and I'm like, yeah, what happened here? Now, I love some of the ideas, like for example, going out into the big, wide, open world and catching Pokemon to your heart's content. Well, I would be saying catching your Pokemon to your heart's content, honestly, if that was what they were allowing you to do. Now, I know some people may go like, but John, why on earth are you saying that they're not allowing you to catch their Pokemon to your heart's content? Well, I hate to break it to you, but Legends Arceus has done this better. Because with Legends Arceus, I got to freely throw my balls at wild Pokemon in hopes of catching them, without even battling them. And by the way, yes, some of that last sentence I'm pretty sure people are going to try and cut out and take out of context. But seriously, I love that kind of freedom inside the game where I didn't have to battle any of the Pokemon whatsoever. It made it more of my choice whether if I actually wanted to battle these Pokemon and see some of their moves, or just simply catch them and move on. Or just catch them, give it as a little bit of a distraction so I can get away from them so, you know, I don't enrage them, and get to the next area as soon as I possibly can. The choice was mine. In fact, I feel like Legends Arceus was far more open than Scarlet and Violet would feel because of the fact that you actually had that kind of choice, and you didn't have the option to just randomly run into Pokemon, or Pokemon running into you. Though, granted, there is a few other issues with the battle system that I would like to bring up with the Pokemon Scarlet and Violet thing, and that is this. Scarlet and Violet really it really dumbed down the fighting system, and I hated this too. I really didn't like the fact that they removed this from Legends Arceus, or I mean, from Scarlet and Violet anyway, from Legends Arceus, because personally, the version from Legends Arceus was so much better. I had so much fun trying to outthink the other opponent and trying to see if I could get another move in as soon as I possibly could. And if I couldn't, well, you know, seeing if the agile or the strong move would actually put the Pokemon out of its misery. I love that idea. It was a fantastic concept, and personally, I think it added an extra layer onto the game that made it that much more engaging. Also, I love the fact that they also use this battle system to allow you to battle multiple Pokemon at the same time, and I think that's a fantastic idea. Now, if you could be able to toss more of your Pokemon out for a more substantial battle too, I think that would also work out pretty good too. I mean, really, the ideas don't stop there. Also, it could work out very well for multiplayer, and you're wondering, how? Well, without hampering the experience too much, I think I would just give the players about a minute to decide their first 4 moves and let the game decide who moves first, depending on what move they choose and what speed their Pokemon is at. Well, not unless they choose a quick attack, which then, of course, yeah, they will always move first by default, but still. And who moves twice in a row, and who's probably going to end up waiting. But building a bit of a snappier battle system, if you know what I mean. And this would work pretty well for multiplayer, and then having it go like 30 seconds for each and every move if the battle isn't over by then. Really, I think that's a fantastic idea and would add a whole new level experience to the gameplay. Speaking of Pokemon battles, by the way, also, when you're paddling inside like a city, it's kind of, the immersion really gets broken when like a random NPC just walks through the battle. Like, seriously, I'm not a big fan of using your Pokemon as murder weapons to murder an innocent child. Yeah, that's a sentence I never thought I'd find myself saying. But that's a huge problem right there, and a big red flag that really they didn't check for quality whatsoever, and this game truly was rushed. Again, I'll get to that when I get to that here in a moment. But personally, if I were to do it, I would have actually had all the people, or at least some of the people that were inside that vicinity, gather around the Pokemon battle and start rooting, or start cheering, or start observing with interest. Because, I mean, seriously, just what they're doing now is just kind of bland, boring, and doesn't get you immersed inside the world. Having them gather around you for a little bit actually makes it feel like there's more stakes to the battle. Makes it feel like, well, more people are interested. Better put on my best show. I think that would help out with the game a lot, and would help out with the battling system a lot. Because then, of course, you would also get impressions with people. And you know what? I think if you did like a social media aspect to it for the games, I think it would probably work out really well for gaining social media popularity too on that. I think that's a really fantastic idea, and really kind of integrates it with our modern day world where we have stuff like Twitter and Facebook, and that full social media feedback is basically that primary driver for a lot of people, even though it really shouldn't. I think that would be a fantastic idea to add on to Pokemon games and add another layer of depth to the game. Because personally, with open world games, it's not just about going wherever you want, doing whatever you want, whenever you please. It's about the amount of depth it takes. Like, for example, Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. They put handicaps on you. Why? Because you quite literally have to improve yourself. You have to learn. Of course, you could get across a river on the lowest stamina possible, but you can't always go across the entire lake on the lowest stamina possible. Heavens no. And you can't really necessarily fly for a long time either. You have to go through all the shrines inside the game just to level yourself up so that you can know how to do this kind of stuff. Heck, even Pokemon Legends Arceus had this, where you couldn't quite necessarily do everything at the very beginning of the game, which, by the way, I know locks you into a bit of a linearity state, though a linearity state that can be a little bit botched through, because I will admit I have climbed some mountains on foot before without having to use Sneasler, but even then, unlocking Sneasler was like a godsend for me because climbing mountains on foot was just kind of a nightmare to do. But I think the game really benefited the more I played because I felt like there was a natural progression. I grew more, the character grew more, the abilities became more and more possible, and what I could do with the game became better. I mean, well, what I could do with the game became more infinite. It became more fun, and it became less and less of a burden to explore the maps, if you know what I'm saying. And now, I don't think this is necessarily a bad idea, and it works as a template for an excellent Pokemon game. But with the way they have Pokemon Scarlet and Violet set up right now, honestly, there's no lap balancing in between any of the regions, so that if you go ahead and fight any of the harder Pokemon up north, well then, guess what? You're gonna end up having a really bad time. And if you do manage to fight them and your Pokemon gets really leveled up way too far, well, let's face it, anything that's below that would, well, let's just say it would look like chump change. I mean, quite literally, you breeze through them with no problem whatsoever, and there's no balancing at all with this. I mean, the idea of having it being an open world would be to have some kind of balancing happening, and you think Game Freak would set something up like that, right? Right? No, not at all. And I think that's like a big problem right there. And it's difficult to say that I think this is the biggest downfall, or at least one of the few downfalls for this game too. Especially with the fact that with the leveling system, well, you still need the gym badges because they still have the obedience system in place, where some Pokemon just will not obey you if you don't have the right gym badges. And sure, I know that's probably the biggest handicap there, but that doesn't really necessarily mean that it's a handicap at all, because I was watching RT Game play it with high-level Pokemon and without the gym badges, and he was quite literally, after he got most of the Pokemon to obey him whenever the Pokemon did obey him whenever he wanted them to obey him, they were really kicking butt. Like, quite literally, most of the Pokemon that he encountered and most of the encounters were just like, no problem whatsoever. One and done. Game over. They're over. They're done. You don't need to worry about them anymore, because, holy moly, we went through them so quick. It's a big problem, and honestly, I really don't like the fact that you could do something like that without having some kind of balance in play here. I think that Game Freak should have a system that would allow for some kind of balance. But if I had to continue on with this subject too, also some of the bosses really did need some balancing too. And by the way, I also didn't really necessarily like the premise of Team Star. And yes, I have seen the story for Team Star all the way through. I think it was kind of dumb, the fact that they were chased out of the school due to bullies, and really, just because they became a team that opposed everything that the modern day society it's stupid. I mean, yes, I know that's relatable for quite a few people out there, but really, that's all they do, is that they're just opposing the school. They're not really necessarily doing anything else that seems to be cruel or evil. They're not, like, threatening to flood the world, or they're threatening to merge two worlds together, or they're threatening to wipe out all of humanity because humanity's bad, or trying to make Pokemon stronger and, well, make Pokemon way stronger, creating heinous abominations that nobody could ever believe? Like, yeah, that's, yeah. Team Star really seems pathetic in comparison to a lot of the other previous Pokemon rivals and champions and other stuff out there. I mean, they really do. It's kind of sad, really, and I don't see how on earth people could get invested with this. Now, I've heard about some plot twists with the professors and all that other stuff, and granted, I don't know, I haven't seen the game played through all the way through, but from what I've seen, I really don't care enough to feel invested about it, unlike Pokemon Legends Arceus, where I did feel cared enough invested, and also I spent $60 on that, so I wanted to play the game all the way through. I even enjoyed the game all the way through. So, why on earth are they doing this? Also, another thing that I also would have to say is that a lot of open world deals with a lot of choice, and I don't feel like you necessarily get that much choice inside this game either. Again, going back to Arceus as an example, in Arceus, you had a choice, especially later on in the game, about choosing if you wanted to go with the leader of the Pearl Clan or the leader of the Diamond Clan. And of course, I think that was actually a very fantastic idea, and honestly, a very well executed, going on to the one point that I would love to make, but I'll probably just leave a hint of it and get a little bit later on in the video, that honestly, Game Freak should really just be more focused on making one game, making it a great experience, and a solid experience, instead of trying to do two games that have the same exact experience, but really are subpar in their optimization and the terms of bugs and glitches, and really just feels like they fall half-baked, really. Because, I mean, really, what's the difference between Scarlet and Violet anyway? I mean, the maps are the same, and the only thing that you really get is a different legendary, different kinds of Pokemon, and whether if you get to choose the ultimate husbando or the hot waifu. And that's it. That is it. I mean, quite literally, at this point, they might as well have just been the exact same game. I don't see why on earth they couldn't do the exact same game, because then, of course, we would have gotten a much better experience that way, and they probably would have been able to spend less time. I don't know what to say about this. I don't know what to say about it any more than what I've already said. Of course, I have been trying to be constructive with this, because I mean, I don't think it's necessarily bad of what they're doing. They just need better systems in place. They need to allow players to go north, south, east, or west. And, of course, I am happy with the fact that they allowed the players to choose whatever gyms they wanted to go to first. But it ain't gonna mean nothing if they're not gonna put balancing in it, because otherwise, it's not truly open now, is it? It's really still a closed experience where you still have to follow that very linear path to go up to the highest rank. And again, that ruins the idea of open world in the first place. Look, Legend of Zelda does this right. Breath of the Wild, you could go straight to Ganon. You don't have to worry about anything in between you and anything else. You can just go straight up to Ganon and fight him. Of course, it's going to be tough as nails and hard as balls, but you bet your bottom dollar you can just go straight to Ganon. Like, no joke. No joke whatsoever. It's dumb. It is absolutely dumb in every way, shape, and form that Pokemon, I mean, just the Pokemon Company and Game Freak would just ignore this in general. And personally, I do not really want to stand for it. Now, I know there's going to be a lot of Pokemon fans who are going to be like, but John, you're being a toxic hater of this, and I'm not. I'm saying this out of a place of pure compassion, and I am trying to be about as constructive with this as I possibly can. Because, you know, I have offered suggestions. I am making ideas for improvement. And I mean, really, I can't really necessarily say what to do about optimization because, again, that falls into more technical stuff. And some things I do understand because I do program stuff, and I am programming my own game engine right now. But most of it, I have no idea what Game Freak did. Not until I take a look at what the source code looks like. Because if I know what the source code looks like, well, then I can immediately point out what's causing the frame lag, what's causing all that awful pop-in, especially with the fact that we also have two characters that could alternately pop in, like quite literally, there's one that's closer to you, one that's further away from you, and they will pop in, like, one character closer to you and then one character farther away from you, and that's only standing away from them, like, maybe 10 feet away from them. It's stupid. I mean, it's really dumb, and a lot of people criticize Sonic Frontiers for having an insane amount of popping. Look, Sonic Frontiers wasn't as jarring because it always happened at least at the same amount of distance. For Scarlet and Violet, they really don't have much excuse here, and they really don't have anything to defend themselves. Also, with the fact that you can't get into houses, that's also kind of cheap and lazy. And again, I do also agree that they were really missing some of the marks here, that they kind of just threw out some of the best ideas from Scarlet. Oh yes, the move system. I actually never talked about this, have I? I forgot about that. The one thing I loved about the move system from Pokemon Legends Arceus is that you could pick and choose whatever moves your Pokemon wanted to learn. And of course, you could do this at any time for any reason. And also, whatever moves your Pokemon unlearned can be learned again, which is an absolutely fantastic system. I mean, it was stored inside the Pokemon's memory, and you could just use these moves at any time if you wanted to. You could swap them out, like if you run out of PP for a certain type of move, then you could just swap it out for another one. And I think that made for a very fantastic experience and made for something that's a little more different and a little more engaging and a little more fun. But in this case, they just placed it and went back to the TM system, which I think is just utter garbage in the first place. No, literally. I had a problem with it in Red and Blue, I had a problem with it in Silver, had a problem with it in Omega Ruby, and I had a problem with it in Sun and Moon. I think the TM system really just needs to die, okay? But Pokemon Legends Arceus gave a very good example of what to replace it with. And honestly, I'm just upset with the fact that they never bothered to use it. And you know, here's also another thing too. I know a lot of people may give praise to how graphically nice the characters look and how graphically nice the models look. And I do agree, they do look pretty good. But the backdrop, the setting, the frame rate, that really takes me away from it, okay? I mean, quite literally, Arceus looks better by miles and miles, and even if it uses repeated textures and have some frame rate issues here and there, I mean, really, that frame rate issues aren't nearly as bad as Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, though. Actually, you should really watch Digital Foundry's video on it. They do a really good job doing a bit of a deep dive into that. But the frame rate issues aren't really necessarily that bad, but still, the point is that the textures looked a lot nicer in Arceus. And if you want to say that Pokemon can't do an open world game, I hate to break it to you, but Arceus exists. It's a much better template, and I think it's a much better use of your money than buying Scarlet and Violet. I mean, if you bought Scarlet and Violet, both the games, I feel really sorry for you because you spent $120? I'm sorry, but that's like insane. Well, again, they really shouldn't be asking that for the bundle pack. Really, if I was going to do a bundle, I would do it for $90. I mean, you quite literally buy one, you get one 50% discount. It's kind of dumb to throw $120 at the wall for a game for two experiences that are exactly the same with some minor tweaks, and both of them just happen to be, well, underneath the bar. And really are pitiful games, nonetheless. I don't know what to say about this anymore. I have completely and totally exhausted myself on this, and really, I don't know if I could step up and say anything more, because what has already been said has already been said at this point. And personally, I really wished Game Freak and Pokemon Company would do better, because truth be told, we deserve better games. We don't deserve games that can crash on us randomly. And yes, this can happen. Also, a game that happens to have a serious memory leak issue, which, by the way, is also true and has been confirmed by Nintendo. Nintendo has warned people not to leave the game under the Switch menu for too long, on hold, or in hiatus, because the memory leak will take over and just crash the game and corrupt your save data. It's bad. It's bad all the way around, and personally, I don't think this game was really acceptable in any way, shape, or form. It doesn't fall underneath the Nintendo quality mark of seal. And I know some people are probably going to criticize me for this, they're going to hate me for this, and I know there's going to be those Game Freak defenders. In fact, I actually happen to be working with one right now, and I hate to disagree with him, but most of his arguments were pretty dumb anyway. I can't really necessarily say that any of those arguments are justifiable, especially with the fact that he's saying that most of the people that are criticizing the game and hating upon the game either are playing it online, which, by the way, some of the clips are not online. They're playing it in an emulator, which, by the way, emulators don't always work necessarily 100% of the time, and they don't always load 10 textures, which is true, but it never really causes corruptions or clips through the world or anything like that. I haven't seen anything like that come from an emulator. Also, they've also made the argument about these people hating this game because of Dexit. Look, I am making criticism about this game, even though I could care less about the stupid national decks. Seriously. It adds way more time and way too much unnecessary work to the game. But again, I'm making these criticisms because I love the Pokemon franchise and I would love to see it do better. But if it's going to keep going down this route, you bet your bottom dollar I'm probably not going to even try to touch the Pokemon franchise from here on out. My last game will truly be Pokemon Legends Arceus, and it'll probably be forever to stay that way. So, what do you guys think? Let me know down in the comments down below. And hey, if you're new here, please be sure to hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe and comment down below. And I'll see you all in the next video. This is Superchocolatemilkshake, signing off.